Dr. Anderson. I'm a research scientist in Center for Research in Material Technologies. About 5 years ago, I started programming these cameras. This is a panoptic camera, a lightweight camera. It has as few as hundreds, as many as thousands of micro lenses in them. They use to take pictures so that you can get the back and the forefront in focus. But I cheated. I started using facial recognition. The idea is I could take one picture and then, with my software, convert it into a 3D image of the person, get a 3D analytic model of the person. That kind of led us to where we are today. HPC and multispectral, what does that mean? I'm using visible as well as the 4 infrared bands for facial recognition. HPC and facial recognition usually don't go well together. Facial recognition has been around for a long time. There's a lot of very good commercial algorithms already available. There's 43 companies providing facial recognition services. When you get your driver's license photo here in Indiana, they use L1 Identity Systems, which is part of the Saffron Group, a French company. In Perry Township, all the schools have use Vigilon, which is British Columbia facial recognition company. So facial recognition has been around quite a bit. What could we possibly add to facial recognition at this point? And that's where we come to what are the drawbacks of the facial recognition algorithms today, the commercial 8 or 9 major commercial algorithms. Well, they work really well if you're looking right at the camera or it's well lit. Now, as we've added deep learning, you can get a little variance from that, from looking direct on, but it's still a problem where we have, when you're looking not right at the camera, you get false negatives. It's a false negative. Well, you're on the watch list and the system doesn't pick you up. Who cares about false negatives? Well, most people, like if your iPhone, they don't care about false negatives. If your phone doesn't recognize you, who cares? You'll have to understand you're in. Or if you're at the airport and you just didn't look right at the thing, well, just look again. Or if you're Customs and Border Protection, you just look right at the camera. But if you're, for instance, surveillance, doing surveillance work, most people are never looking right at the camera. In fact, it's usually dark. There's a lot of challenges with the environment. I spoke with a casino yesterday, the Tropicana group, who was meeting with the surveillance team, and they arrest 1,800 people a year. So on any given day, they got a huge number of cases, card counters, there are all sorts of criminal activity going on. So these are the kind of people that care about false negatives. And the goal is to create algorithms for those false negatives. And in fact, we did that. Indiana University patented it in 2015. And this is kind of a follow-up to that. So infrared, multispectral work. The problem with multispectrals, as David Leak mentioned, is you just don't have a lot of data to work with. There's not many facial infrared databases. For shortwave infrared band, that's in the reflective regime. It looks a lot like visible. There's 0 public facial databases for shortwave infrared. Near infrared's used a little bit more. It goes through glass, it goes through windows, but it looks a lot more like visible. But the more interesting ones are the midwave and the longwave infrared. These are the emissive bands. You don't need any illumination. It can be completely dark. You don't have to take an infrared illuminator to be able to see the person. And they are really interesting. Again, no databases. So we're dealing with a system where we're trying to do facial recognition in which there's no facial databases. On top of that, the databases we have are visible databases. We want to take images in long-wave infrared, facial images, and then match them against a visible database. That's heterogeneous facial recognition. On top of that, infrared facial recognition, the multispectral stuff, has the same problems as your visible facial recognition. If you're not looking right at the camera, it's pretty much doomed. And if you have large data sets you can train on, you can get a little bit of variation. And facial pose variation results in large false negatives. So these are some of the challenges of multispectral facial recognition. And that's where this camera started coming in. We thought, well, wait a second, what if we just started using this old software I did for pulling out 3D images, and what if we did the same with the infrared images and start matching them with the visible 3D images? And so that's what we've been doing. That's a little overview of my research. Mostly focused on the long-wave infrared. Long-wave infrared is especially interesting because it goes right through cloth. It goes through suitcase. If you have duffel bags, you can see in the duffel bags. You can see the guitar cases. It's a really useful band to work with. And especially even if your face is covered or if you're wearing a disguise and you're trying to get your iPhone to recognize you if you're putting your finger like this. Put on a fake mustache. You'll never do it. It's false negative. But then long-wave infrared doesn't have that problem. It goes right through those sorts of disguises. You can see fundamental material. So I'll just finish up. We built this with the support of the Johnson side. We built an array of 2D cameras, which uses photo alignment to produce 3D pictures. we take pictures of people driving by in cars. There's a little example there. And then we construct a 3D face, which you can see. And then we did a little work for Customs and Border Protection to develop systems for their biometric exit program. So why HPC? You know, a typical 3D multispectral cloud, you've got about 80,000 points. You convert it, we use the IU patented algorithm. It takes about 85 teraflops, so it's expensive, about 2 GPUs. But it produces extremely low false negatives. So you can do lots of facial preservation, work in the dark, and more importantly, it gives a low false acceptance rate. So that's kind of the exciting stuff that's going on.